Welcome to our China Stories, a series which explores Chinese culture through the eyes of 5 China experts. They have dedicated their lives to the learning of Chinese history and culture.
There's so much in Chinese history that ordinary people in the West can be interested in and fascinated by, make comparisons and so on.
And have formed a connection with the country through their different disciplines.
I wanted to go and make a series of films that revealed the real soul of China.
In a world where cultural barriers and limited knowledge of China continue to exist.
We'll have huge opportunities, I think, to do cultural exchanges between China and the UK.
They seek to improve the understanding between China and the West.
You realise actually there are many more similarities than there are differences. The problem is it's always the differences that get accentuated.
So I hope that those young people are the new generation of translators.
Join me for the next 5 episodes on our China Stories. In this final episode, I spoke to James Trapp, translator of numerous Chinese classics, including the great philosophical works of Sun Tzu's Bing Fa and Lao Tzu's Dao De Jing. James also worked as the China Education Manager at the British Museum, promoting more awareness of Chinese culture and trying to introduce the Mandarin language into the British school curriculum.
When I was 14, I was taken to an exhibition at the Royal Academy in London. It was called The Genius of China, and it was the first exhibition of new archaeological finds from China in the UK in about 50, 60 years. And I'd never seen anything like it. I couldn't articulate it then, but what I was seeing, what I think now is, I was seeing a completely different visual and artistic aesthetic, a way of representing things that I'd not seen before. And something about it grabbed me. There was a pair of shroud weights from a Han Dynasty tomb in the form of coiled leopards. They were inlaid gilt bronze with ruby or garnet eyes, and I just thought they were fabulously beautiful. Actually, originally, because it was the art that interested me and archaeology, I wanted to do a degree in Chinese archaeology that SOAS was offering, but I was the only person in the whole country who wanted to do it, so it didn't happen. But they said, well, come and read Chinese and you can do special subjects in your 3rd and 4th year. I think there were only 5 universities in the whole country that offered Chinese, and in my year at SOAS only 4 of us graduated. There were 25 people in the whole country who graduated in Chinese.
James spent a few years working in art dealing before teaching Chinese culture as an after-school club, until eventually he cooperated with the British Museum, Confucius Institute and Institute of Education to encourage a more widespread interest in Mandarin and offer it as a foreign language taught in schools. He then embarked on a career in translation, translating Chinese classical works, which presented many challenges.
Well, I got contacted out of the blue pretty much by a publishing company wanting to do a book on Chinese characters, and it was a little coffee table book. And then it went on from there. Then I did another book on Chinese proverbs, and then one on Chinese astrology, about which I know nothing. But after that, they then said, well, we're looking to translate some of the classics. Could you translate Sun Tzu Bing Fa? And I said yes, of course, not knowing whether I could do it at all or not. I still think that if you really want to learn modern Chinese, the more you know of classical Chinese, the better. It's not essential, but it certainly gives you a different level of understanding. And then I went on to do Dao De Jing, which was, I think, rather ambitious, because exactly what. But my approach was that I will just take the text as it comes. I'm not a classical linguistic academic. I'm not a Chinese philosopher or anything like that. But I know about these texts. I enjoy them, and I enjoyed the challenge of translating them. I think particularly for Westerners attempting to translate classical Chinese, the first problem is that we don't have the background. Many of these works have been part of your life from quite an early age. You may not have read them in their entirety, but you know about them, and you will know phrases from them, and you'll know the thinking, and the kind of philosophy behind them is something that's part of your general education and things around you. And that's not the case for someone like me. I can imagine it, things, but I haven't got that depth of background. The challenge is to translate the way of thinking represented by the Chinese into language that works in English. You realise actually there are many more similarities than there are differences. The problem is it's always the differences that get accentuated. They're fundamental to to understanding Chinese, really. Dao De Jing or Binfa or whatever, or Shiji or whatever. So these are all part of your cultural experience. The more access or the more familiarity that a Westerner has with those, the more points of contact that will then develop.
James feels that there is still limited understanding of China amongst British society, but that along with growing education opportunities comes a growing awareness of China and its culture.
If you go in and ask your average class, I used to do a lot of New Year assemblies and things, and I would go in and do a half day on Chinese culture or whatever, and you start off by asking, what do you know about China? And this was 5-6 years ago, and you'd still get the same answers. It would be pandas, chopsticks, Great Wall, and more often than not, karate and sushi. It's still very much a closed book to the majority of English people anyway. Things have improved in that there are larger numbers of students studying, learning Mandarin, and there is more engagement, and there is kids now more about China because they have lots of things that are made in China. They play computer games, and so you see lots of people with Chinese character tattoos and so on. So there's more of an awareness, perhaps, but it's a very generalised.
James is personally very engaged with Chinese culture through his collection of Chinese art, cooking Chinese food, and teaching his family more about China.
I have Chinese paintings all over the house. In fact, I've been told I'm not allowed to buy another Chinese painting next time I go out there because we haven't got room for it. I cook a lot of Chinese food, particularly Sichuan food. And yeah, my daughters have all been infected with it. Yes, it's very much a part of my everyday life. It's become a part of my family's life as well, and I'm very happy about that.